Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, Cooking for the Family. I'm Devon and today I'm going to share with you how to make the best buttermilk scones from scratch. This recipe is simple to make. I'm going to show you the tricks, the tips and techniques to have delicious scones from scratch for your breakfast or holiday brunch. Are you ready? Let's get started. Now for our scones, we're going to be using all-purpose unbleached flour. Now it's important that when you're measuring out your flour, you make sure that you level it off. We're going to be using 3 cups of all-purpose flour. Now in the description box below, I'm going to have a list of the ingredients, but it's not just about the ingredients, y'all. It's also about how we put those ingredients together. We're also using 1/3 cup of granulated sugar, okay? And did you see what I did? I like to go on and use my wire whisk and mix the flour and the sugar together before I add the other ingredients. We've added then our baking powder, and I'm using the regular double acting baking powder, and then also we're going to use some baking soda. Okay, so we're using some baking powder as well as some baking soda. Now we're also going to put in some salt. I'm putting in 1 teaspoon of regular table salt to our buttermilk scones that we're going to be making. Now once I have these ingredients in, once I put in my sugar and my leveling, I also go in with my wire whisk once again and I mix everything around. The reason why I do that, y'all, is because I want to aerate my flour. And in order to do that, I need to do my wire whisk as well as mix those ingredients in together. Now next what we're going to do is we're using butter. You want to use unsalted butter because we've already put our salt in there, so you want to use unsalted butter because scones are not savory like sometimes biscuits can be, and so you want to make sure that you're using unsalted butter in this recipe. Now my butter was frozen, okay? You want to use frozen butter, and I'm using my grater, my cheese grater, okay? And that's because I want to create a lot of nice cold butter flakes in my dough when I am making my scones, okay? And so once I do that, I go on with my fingers and I break up that butter, and I'm mixing that butter into the flour. And you see how I'm using my fingertips and I'm pinching right there, and I'm mixing it and taking it through. I'm making sure that I'm working that flour and that butter in together so they are nice sized pea pieces of that hard frozen butter. And when you're using that frozen butter, not just refrigerated, but frozen butter, it's going to create those pockets of flakiness that we need. Now next we're going to use some cold buttermilk, and so we're using 1 cup of nice cold buttermilk. Now before you add your buttermilk, make sure that you shake it so that way you get all the essence of your buttermilk right into your scones. Okay, now once I've done that, you want to start off with your spatula first because you want to touch your dough as little as possible, and we're going to be doing a little bit of kneading later with our dough, and you don't want to touch it too much because you don't want that warmth from your hands to break down your butter. And so at the beginning, I just go in and I use my spatulas, and you see how I'm pressing and moving my bowl around. And I'm pressing down just like that and gently moving my bowl. So you want to alternate your bowl as you're pressing your spatula, and I go from the bottom of my bowl like that and I flip over. You see what I'm doing there? That's what you want to do when you're pressing your flour and your buttermilk, okay, and your butter, and you're mixing it all together. Now once I've done that and it's kind of gotten to this step here, we're going to go on and finish it up with my hand. And you see how I'm mixing? I'm just using one hand at first, and I just kind of mix it around the bowl, and I'm turning that bowl, and I'm going from the bottom, and I'm flipping my dough over in the bowl, and I'm pressing because you want to have a nice solid mound of dough. And how you do that is that you work from the bottom of your bowl, because that's going to be usually the flour will settle on the bottom, and you come forward. Now once I get to this point, if I see I need a little bit more of the buttermilk, you can go on and add some more buttermilk, but you only want to do it about a teaspoon at a time. And usually you may need to add about 1 to 2 teaspoons more, no more than that. because you don't want your scone dough to be too sticky or too wet, and so you want to be mindful of the consistency and how it's feeling. And right now in my hand, this dough is very cold because I had that frozen butter, and because also I had that ice cold buttermilk from the refrigerator. Okay, and so now at this point, what I like to do is we're going to go on, before we start really kneading the dough too much, I like to divide my dough. And so we're going to go on and divide the dough just here. And hey, if you are new here, welcome. And if you're a returner to my channel, welcome back. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, go on and hit that subscribe button. And if you like this video and appreciate the content, don't forget to show it some love and give it a thumbs up. Now, once I've divided my dough, and the scone recipe is going to make anywhere from 14 to 16 scones, depending on the size of your scones. If you want to do some bigger scones, you can end up making about a dozen scones. So I divided in half because we also like to put chocolate chips in our scones. And these are regular semi-sweet chocolate chips, and you want to use semi-sweet chocolate chips if you're putting them in your scones. I'm using the regular size. However, you can go on and use the miniature semi-sweet chocolate chips as well. And then I'm folding it over in thirds. You see how I'm doing there? I'm folding it over in thirds like you would do a letter. And so I folded it over in thirds, and I'm just kind of pressing and mixing those semi-sweet chocolate chips all right there within the dough. Also, something else is that with scones, if you want to put raisins in it, if you want to put blueberries in it, you can put any kind of a dried fruit in it. Works really well. Currants are really traditional in putting in scones, but I'm going to make some just regular plain buttermilk scones, and the other ones we're going to put some of those semi-sweet chocolate chips that I did there. Now, when it comes to rolling out your scones, whether you're using a silicone pad like I'm using, or whether you're using a cutting board, you want to avoid putting too much flour on those boards. Okay, you want just enough so that way it doesn't stick at all. And I would not use more than a couple of teaspoons up to maybe a tablespoon of flour. Now, when you're rolling out your scones, you see how I am just reshaping them, and I'm going to make mine in the shape of a rectangle. Okay, now scones can come in many different shapes and sizes. You can usually do squares, and that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm actually going to be doing it in a rectangle first, and then these I'm going to cut into halves once I have them on my baking tray. And you can also cut your scones in triangles, because with scones, they're a little bit more rugged with their shape and sizes, unlike how biscuits can sometimes be. Okay, now once we've done that, I'm going to go on and work on the second scone, my regular plain buttermilk scones. Now you see, when I talk about kneading, you see how I'm flipping and folding it over. With scones, you do not knead them. You do not knead them like you would biscuits. All right, now the scones I've rolled out the size of about a half an inch thick. The thickness to scones are usually a little bit thicker than what you would a biscuit. So they're about a half an inch thick that you want to roll your scones out to. Okay, and so once I do that, I take it from this standpoint and I'm putting it on my baking tray, and I'm going to show you how I continue to cut them, and I'm just going to go on and cut them right in half. I've already cut some, and I've got just a little bit of space between them. Scones will rise, and they don't really spread out as much as they spread upwards, okay? And so you're going to get a nice height from your scones as they bake. And also to note, guys, when you're rolling out your scones, you want to be gentle. You don't want to put a lot of pressure on your rolling pin when you're rolling out your scones. Now with the scones, I brushed mine with some half and half, but you can also use some heavy cream, and that's going to help create a little bit of that gloss on top using the sugar. And I'm using some raw cane sugar, but you can also use just regular granulated sugar, and that's going to give you a little bit of that crunchy topping of a little bit on the top of your scones. And it's also going to create those indentations that you have grown to know with scones as the signature look of a scone. And so that's going to put, like I said, that half and half or either that heavy cream brushed on top. Now they have baked for about 18 minutes in a 400-degree oven. It does not take long, and you don't want to overbake your scones. You don't want to dry them out by overbaking them. So be mindful to check them about at 15 minutes, but they could take as much as 18 minutes at 400 degrees. And this is my scone here. This one here is the one that have the semi-sweet chocolate chips. You see that nice Nice light golden bottom, nice top. Wow, you see those flakes? That nice layer of the flakiness of that scone. Scones can sometimes be dense, but they can be very light and airy if they're made properly, and that's what having that frozen butter that we grated into our dough. They taste so good. They have that nice little sweetness to them. And now let's go on and try one of our regular scones. And you see how just putting on those little grooves and crevices on top, that comes from that heavy cream or either the half and half being brushed on top. And let's look at the inside and see just how nice and flaky that is. And you see those layers and the nice flakiness just like that. Now scones, some mascarpone cheese on scones goes so good. And if you haven't experienced any mascarpone cheese, it can have the similar consistency of a whipped cream cheese, but it has a different kind of a sweetness to it, and it's delicious with scones. We're also going to put some of these fresh strawberry preserves that I have right with that, and that is it. That is our wonderful scones. Well, I hope you give this recipe a try. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, go on and hit that subscribe button. And if you like this video and appreciate the content, don't forget to show it some love and give it a thumbs up. And remember, go on and hit that notification bell so that way you see anything that's going on in Devon's kitchen. Well, that is it for me today, guys. And remember, it is always good when Devon is cooking for the family. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye, everybody.